When politicians take power, they always have promises to fulfill. Sometimes they make good on them, sometimes they don't. But seldom do those promises sound anything like this one. We are going to destroy the oligarchy system. That's what Greece's new government, a coalition led by Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras, says it's going to do. And when they talk about going after the oligarchs, they're not just talking about the banks whose failings brought the country's economy to its knees or the energy sector. They're talking about the media, which the new government says has an unholy alliance with business interests that sponge off the state. This is a story that the rest of Europe is watching closely and reporting on extensively, given the more than 200 billion euros that Greece owes its European creditors after two bailouts. Syriza was elected not because of the coverage it got during the campaign, but despite it. However, news organizations that were once outwardly hostile to the party can read polls too. They saw which way the wind was blowing and they were changing their tune long before a single vote was cast. The question is, what happens now that Syriza's in power? Will the new government really take on big business and the media that the oligarchs control? And if so, how? Our starting point this week is the birthplace of democracy, Athens. Talk to Greeks and they will tell you that this wasn't a typical election.
And the winner is?
It wasn't, they say, a conventional ideological fight between the left and right that have defined Greek politics since World War II. This was an election with the air of a referendum. It was about austerity, the Syriza party that opposed it, the incumbent party that supported it, and the media, most of which was pro-austerity and therefore anti-Syriza.
The Greek media landscape is divided between media which support the bailout and media which do not support the bailout. So it's not that politicized as it was before the crisis. I consider it a very big success of Syriza that it managed to become elected without having a heavy support from the so-called mainstream Greek media.
Οι διοικήσεις των τραπεζών είναι αρκετά προβληματισμένες από την μαζική εκροή καταθέσεων.
Which during the pre-election campaign had a very negative coverage of the program of Syriza, suggesting that it could not be viable and sustainable in the case the party would govern.
What's really strange about the rise of Syriza in Greek politics is the fact that for the previous 2 years they have been the main opposition party, does not have one single big newspaper, big TV channel being even remotely friendly to its agenda. We've seen this strange phenomenon whereby the majority of the big media, pretty much everybody, was against Syriza.
On the other hand, however, two mainstream important Greek newspapers like to Vima and Ta Nea have started to see Mr. Tsipras in a relatively positive way a few days before the election, and also in their front pages, as far as Ta Nea is concerned, the day after the election, considering the situation as a historical opportunity of the left.
That was some last-minute pragmatism because pretty much all of the major media outlets in Greece have owners who are pro-austerity and therefore oppose Syriza. And for years, they had been doing billions of euros worth of business with the same politicians their media outlets were supposed to be keeping honest. Here are just three of the major players. A large part of Mega TV and the Ethnos newspaper are owned by George Bobolas and members of his family. He is also a mining and construction magnate through his holding company, Elaktor. Vardis Vardinoyannis has a big stake in Piraeus, Greece's biggest bank. His company is also into energy and shipping and controls Star TV, multiple radio stations, and more than 20 magazines. Stavros Tsikaras heads a group that has interests ranging from printing to real estate to tourism, along with major newspapers To Vima and Ta Nea, as well as magazines. And Bobolas, Vardinoyannis, and Tsikaras are joined at the corporate hip through their shared ownership or involvement in Teletipos, the company that operates the aforementioned Mega TV, one of Greece's biggest channels.
The media, the big channels and the big newspapers are owned by what we call the Greek oligarchs. The Greek oligarchs are super rich ship owners, or people that own construction companies, or people that have close ties with the previous governments and that have been having favors. This so-called impartiality and objectivity, there is no such thing. There is no such thing in the Greek media, there is no such thing in the international media, given the fact that they're owned by super rich.
And what will you do to the oligarchy concretely?
We are going to destroy the basis upon which they have built for decade after decade a system and network that...
Yes, Yannis Varoufakis, the current Greek finance minister, has told Channel 4 that Syriza plans to destroy the basis of what he described as an unholy alliance of bankrupt bankers, developers, and media owners who have steered the debate on austerity in Greece. I would say that to a great extent this would be more of an electioneering thing to do rather than something that we can expect. I mean, it's a very difficult riddle to untangle in the first place.
And untangle is the right word, because the term Greeks use to describe their oligarchs is diaplekomeni, which translates to the entangled. And while the quality of Greek journalism is in doubt, the quantity is not. In 2009, on the eve of the economic crisis, Greece had 39 national newspapers in a country of just 11 million. As the U.S. Embassy in Athens put it in 2006 in a diplomatic cable published by WikiLeaks, how can all these media outlets operate profitably? They don't. They are subsidized by their owners who use the media primarily to exercise political and economic influence. This time, with this election, they did not get the result they wanted. The answer to the question why, at least part of it, can be found online.
Syriza, given the fact that its main supporting base are young people, used a lot new media, social media, alternative media, websites. Syriza supporters are those who read between the lines, are those who don't listen to the news the way that older people do, are those who will search a bit more on the internet, who will do some research online, because people that voted for Syriza understand that the mainstream narrative is not the correct one.
They prefer newer, independent media. Most of these are online, naturally, because it is cheaper. You can cite media online like Press Project or different websites like Omnia TV. Our magazine, Unfollow, is one of these media, and Hot Doc is another one of these independent media. They mostly tend to get their information from these kind of sources. A younger public, a public that is more politicized, perhaps a little bit more radical, wants a different kind of reporting, a different kind of journalism.
The new government wants a different kind of journalistic landscape. Easier said than done, given the complexities of corporate ownership and the web of ties that corporations have long had to the government that Syriza has just inherited. It's like the Greek fable of the Gordian knot, often used as a metaphor for an intractable problem. Legend has it that Alexander the Great just took a knife to it. Prime Minister Tsipras and Syriza wish it was that easy, as they prepare to take on the media barons and untangle Greeks from the entangled. On the download this week, our viewers on the various kinds of coverage that they're seeing on the political story in Greece.
The media in Greece has been much less judgmental and biased towards the new government than the European and international press. The German press refers to Prime Minister Tsipras in a negative and one-sided format, which creates an unnecessary atmosphere of hostility. The international press should recognize the new situation, and instead of being frightened by it, it should look at it as what it is, a democratic process, and work more towards a balanced media coverage.